Those that succeed in business really well, they're not afraid to ask for help. And I think that that's so key, is like you pull that ego aside. You want to do this, ask for help. There's nothing wrong with that.
Welcome to The Growth Shift, the podcast where we unlock the psychological and strategic blueprints of predictable growth. In every episode, we dive into the critical turning points of industry leaders and uncover how they're leveraging AI not as a shortcut, but as the strategic force for their next growth shift. Today, we dive in with a leader who is defining the future of their industry. Brendan Bates has grown companies into the multi-millions, led growth across an entire region in consulting, and launched an enterprise-level workforce development platform. But the company he runs now may be the one that matters most to him. EqualAccess is a workforce development and hiring firm with a difference. It stays with every person it places for 6 months after the hire, coaching them, whether they've landed an entry-level role or a C-suite seat. Brendan built it on a straightforward conviction that everyone deserves the social capital that helps other people get ahead. In its first year, the firm is already working with more than a dozen companies across New York City, from venture-backed startups to affordable housing operators. Brendan, welcome to The Growth Shift.
Thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure. Thank you for that intro. Beautiful intro.
Just sharing a little bit about your journey and your mission. I'd be really going to get into it now, though, Brendan. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Now, early on, Brendan, you walked in to quit your first finance job, as you've told me, and the executive you reported to refused to let you go, becoming an accidental mentor who guided you for years. Tell us a little bit more about the foundational journey that you had, some of the key highlights along the way, and really what led you to EqualAccess.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was a kid that grew up in New York City. I was around finance my whole life, seeing stockbrokers and other individuals excel in the finance field. So I went to school for finance, thinking that's what I wanted to do. Early on in my career, through college, I had held sales roles, retail sales roles, etc. So when I did land my first finance position and I started to look at not only what I was doing, but who I was working with, and I realized quickly that I could no longer talk to people as much as I wanted to. I was sitting behind a computer and I was doing pivot tables on top of pivot tables, and then creating pivot tables on top of that because I was so bored. I got the nickname Office Mayor, which, as you can imagine, a finance guy who's supposed to be sitting behind a computer doing spreadsheets probably isn't a good title to have. And I was with an organization, though, that was really unique. It was a company that believed in culture more than any other company I'd worked for at the time. And I went in to speak to the executive leader that was, he was CFO at the time. And I said, hey, because he had helped interview me, I said, hey, I really appreciate this opportunity. He gave me a chance to get into a finance position, and I was stepping away from it. And he turns to me and he's like, why do you want to leave? And I was like, well, I'm just really not happy with sitting behind a computer. As you know, I really like to talk to people. I feel like that's where I can excel. I'm a networker. And I think I might have made a mistake by taking a job where I can't do that. And he goes, okay. And he goes, so what's your plan? And I was like, my plan, I'm going to go back to my old employer and I'm going to get back into sales. And he's like, it's a great plan, but you're not going to do that. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm giving you a 2-week notice. I'm not just going to quit. And he's like, no, he's like, you're a fit. He's like, what we could do is have you sit with some of the other teams within the organization. The value you bring as the office mayor, he's like, I have people coming to me talking about how you've brightened their day or how you've helped them with a problem where nobody else in the finance team has. And he's like, that's valuable in and of itself. But he's like, what you could do within our organization could be even more valuable for us and for you. So I actually went and I sat with some other teams. I got to sit with a recruiter who I still think about till today. And she helped instill some of the values that she had, which was, she was helping individuals get positions that were affecting them at work, but also at home. She's like, so I was making, she said to me, I'm making a difference not only for them career wise, but also making it so that they have an opportunity to impact their family. And long story short, there, I ended up 6 months after, so I had started 3 months in. I went to go quit, and my accidental mentor, he said, no, you can't do that. And I went and I shadowed some other groups. And 3 months after that, I ended up starting as a recruiter. And that's where my career within HR services, within helping connect people with amazing opportunities and mentorship, all took a jump off.
Amazing. Brendan, going through that situation, right? It must have taken quite a while for you to get to a point where you said, you know what, I am going to go to the CFO and tell him I think I made a mistake. Right? It takes a lot to do that. For anyone to quit a job, especially if they're doing well, right? Just the feeling that maybe this isn't where I belong. It's a lot to overcome. Was it a quick shift that you made after that? I mean, you got some outside perspective, and I'm sure you thought, okay, some of that makes sense. I'm gonna trust this person who's giving me some advice from the seat that they're sitting in. But it's not always a quick pivot from that, mentally, emotionally, right? It's not like the light has just come on and everything looks and feels different. I imagine there were still a few hard days or weeks coming into work after that, feeling like, oh, is this really where I should be? Is this really where I belong? It sounds like that next shift, 3 months later, was really what you needed. But in between those times, were you still feeling doubts, concerns, hesitations? And if so, how did you really start to make that internal shift necessary to recommit yourself, let's say, emotionally and psychologically?
Yeah. One of the things that I look back at is, yeah, sure. So that 6 month time frame, I did 3 months, I stayed in finance, went to go quit. And then after that, 3 months later, I was within, the BD side, the recruiting side. That first year was ups and downs. Anybody that's been in the consulting industry, especially within talent management, understands those highs are super high and those lows are very low. You're dealing with people as your product, so that always is a different outlook. Like you can't, with the iPhone, it's the same thing over and over again. You know what you're getting, right? You open the box, it should be the same. Quality control is there. When you're working with individuals, they have feelings that somebody might take an offer and then if they pull out of it. So that first year in recruiting was definitely tough. And I look back at like really my pivots to growth are there's a couple. Like I had to adapt to new managers. I had to adapt to different styles. And I remember going along the way, what was great for me was that accidental mentor, while he was no longer my manager when I was in recruiting, I would always go back to him and we would always talk. We would sit in the office for 30 minutes. We would go and grab drinks or, at dinner and discuss different aspects of it. And I was blessed. And that was a big impact for me to be able to have that in my life. When I did start to excel and I was very comfortable. I grew in the recruiting role. I ended up becoming a regional vice president and, I managed a whole region and a team and everything was going kosher. And then in comes a new manager. So I had the same manager for 5 years. I look back and now all of a sudden I'm having to deal with somebody who honestly had a completely different working style than what I was used to. And that for me was very difficult. So I went from somebody who was very not numbers driven. They were more emotionally driven. They were more about, great, just get it done. I know you'll do the work. How can I assist you? To somebody who's like, I need to know the strategy and the numbers behind it. And I look back at it, I understand DISC personality styles now. But, I was dealing with somebody who, was more on where I'm at, the high I, low D. And then now I'm going over to the high I, high C. And so, when you're dealing with somebody on the other side of the spectrum, you have to think about how you can shift. And a lot of that time I had spent with that accidental mentor was talking about different personality styles. And, you're here to help your managers, succeed as much as they're here to help you succeed. And so I had to adapt to those new styles and I had to adjust myself. And that was tough. And that took many months to be able to do so. But then once I did, I understood that, adaptability, especially within that change, is the most important piece of your career and being able to shape how you can impact your customers. So I was dealing with a lot of customers at the time. And I started to provide services that I didn't even realize I could provide to them. if that makes sense. So I was going above and beyond now. They were taken back by the data and analytics I was providing that I wasn't before. And it was because of this management shift and accepting it and trying to grow with that change management.
So there's been a lot of learning along the way, right? There's been periods of discomfort and periods of feeling very low, periods of feeling elated as well, especially earlier in the career, grappling with that growth. What do you think has been the most impactful moment for you when it comes to a lesson that you had or a situation you were in and what you realized as a result of what you went through?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's moments that I look back on where, in everybody's life, there's moments where you're going to look back and you're going to say, "Man, I wish I had done that better." And then there's moments where I look back and I'm like, after thinking that, then I go forward 6 months and I'm like, I'm really happy that actually happened. I'm really happy I took that leap of faith. So that manager that came in that I told you was the opposite from the other manager, he
Mhm.
actually was part of the reason that I took a leap of faith and took a new position at a consulting company. So I was very comfortable for many years. I had worked almost over a decade in one organization helping them grow. So we grew from 80 million in revenue while I was there to 850 million with a total sales team of less than 10. So you can imagine, like, this is a gritty company that I worked for. I been there for a while, very successful, ran a team, and I remember thinking about, okay, what is my next step? And I look back and I remember people going on to new organizations, and I kind of had that regret. And I was like, I should have done that. I'm not gonna, and then I thought I can never do that. And my manager had left, and he's like, listen, you said you had interest in learning more. There's a really great consulting opportunity. I think we can be able to provide you with this new company. And I took that leap of faith. And had I not done that, I definitely would have been here today. And it caused me to see so much more that was out there and the benefits of what I could provide to so many other organizations that I had learned and that these other companies weren't utilizing at the time. I look at that as definitely a learning opportunity. I think a lot of the individuals that have worked for me, it's been amazing. One of my mentors once said, one of the best highs you'll get as a manager is seeing somebody else succeed. And it's so true. When I look back at, like the challenges of managing a workforce internally that worked for me and, being able to help everybody hit their goals, one of the best things is seeing them hit their goals and then succeed, right? And even get promoted. And so those are a couple of things that I look back on is that I wish I would have capitalized more on opportunities that arose and then enjoyed the moments along the way so that I could kind of really take those in and then even learn from them further.
And so, Brandon, you mentioned that, that leap of faith that you took into the consulting world is really what enabled you and allowed you to get to the position you are today with Equal Access. Let's chat a little bit more about what you are doing today, right? I mean, helping others get social capital. What does that even mean? I mean, how are you actually working with your clients and what's the real value that you're bringing to the table for them?
David, this is I could talk to you about this forever. Hopefully your audience will enjoy this too. Back to the accident. I know I keep saying this and I don't know if this is a term or not, but I say it all, it's accidental mentor. It shouldn't be accidental. I grew up, my father didn't graduate ninth grade, went on to a hardworking job, was very, very disciplined in going to work every day and being able to provide for the family. Actually, one of the things that he says that he wishes he was able to do was take the kids to school every day. So if you talk to anybody that knows me, it's a non-negotiable. I take my kids to school every day. I wake up with my daughter, we go to the gym at 6:30, come back, get ready, drop her off at school, drop my son off at school every day. It's a non-negotiable. Equal access, when you look at organizations that are within the consulting industry, typically, it's very transactional. So when we opened Equal Access, we said it's going to be the opposite. Like, we want long term. Everything that we structured around is long term. But the mission was driven around being able to provide that accidental mentorship so that individuals could have access to mentorship and coaching that typically wouldn't have it. And there's a lot of individuals in the workforce that don't have it. So every single person that we work with, whether you're working that entry level position straight out of school, or maybe you didn't, maybe it's out of high school, all the way up to that C-suite executive gets that coaching. And what that does is that changes the transactional nature to a long-term genuine relationship, because
Mm.
now we're talking to you biweekly. We're doing it for 6 months. We're engaging that feedback with our clients so that they understand how to grow as well. That's just a piece of what we're doing as well. Workforce development is another piece. So we actually created an amazing program called the Doorway Project, where we help entry-level talent get into building services and property management roles. We work with a lot of property management operators. And one of the biggest challenges was retention. And David, as you can imagine, you have individuals that are entry level, maybe a porter or a handyman. They're going in, they want to work, and maybe there's an issue with their manager or running late, maybe it's childcare, whatever it might be. A lot of times these individuals don't have access to a mentor that can tell them, hey, why don't we address this? Maybe we could talk to the manager about this and just shift your schedule 1 hour later so you can drop your kid off at daycare. And they would like it because you're still there at 6. But those conversations don't happen normally because somebody doesn't have that social capital to be able to have that guide to be able to do that.
Mhm.
So every organization we work with, that program in and of itself was funded by a nonprofit because it means retention at entry level roles, which create careers, and those careers go on to impact many lives. And a lot of that stems from just being able to help somebody after they've been placed in a job.
Mhm.
50% of our business is also focused on consulting. So we do a lot of management consulting, leadership training. Going back to what I learned early is how important it is that, leaders grow. I grew. And I had that mentor, but a lot of managers don't. And so we go in and we help leaders understand fundamentally the different DISC behavioral styles. We do fundamental business acumen training, calendar management, understanding how organizations can change their org charts internally to adapt to better, and more efficient growth. And we're doing this with, again, you highlighted in the beginning, but close to a dozen property managers in New York City and some of the largest. And then we have venture-backed startups we're working with. But it's all founded on the same basis, is that we're not going to work with an organization that doesn't believe in their biggest asset, which is people. And so we're centered all around people because that's what
Mm.
matters most to these organizations. And we're excited the impact that we've made already.
Brandon, impact is the right word. You are filling an incredible gap that's in the market, especially when we're looking at the recruitment side of things, right? I mean,
Mhm.
for people switching jobs, there's a certain level of confidence, or even if it's a junior level role, there's a certain level of confidence, but there's always a certain amount of concern as well. Will I be able to meet the expectations? Will I get past that first 3 month term, right? Probationary period. What will I do if I'm struggling, right? Who can I trust? And then on the employer's side as well, right? What if this person doesn't work out? What if they don't actually have what's really needed? What if they just interview really well and all of these things? So you're coming in not only to be an advocate for the candidate and to help them succeed in the role, but you're also representing your client by way of the employer as well to ensure that the people that you place, sure, they have trust in you and the results that you've had, but you're there with them to make sure that it's a long-term placement. It's not someone that'll turn very quickly. It's very unique. I love what you're doing.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a journey. I got to tell you, David, it's not only the candidates that are adjusting, it's the employers. The employers aren't used to this sort of engagement from a third party. And
Hmm.
but that sort of disruption is needed in order to see that long-term success. Absolutely.
And success is a good word. It's been one that's been coming to you. You've grown very quick, a little less than a year in business, and you're already making waves there in New York. When we look at your vision for growth, that next growth shift that you're in pursuit of right now for equal access, what are you working towards?
Yeah, David, this is where I think you and I clicked in some of the conversations we've had before. Operational workflows and SOPs are key to what we do. It helps not only organizations, standardize practices across the board so that Jane is doing the same thing as John, but it also helps employees feel like they're being treated fairly. They understand how to do it. So number one, I think I see a huge shift, at least in the property management space in which we're doing a lot of the consulting, is creating operational efficiencies. AI is part of all of this, right? It's I almost don't like using the word anymore because I feel like it's too gimmicky, but how we're using AI to help our clients. We have a platform called the Access in which we use all of those approved documentation and operational workflows. We use like a thoughtful process that gets built out so that the organization, the employees, can have access to these documents on the go. And not only that, they're getting quick answers and they're not going to HR, and HR is like, oh my God, another ticket that I got to deal with. And an example of that is like we have a property management firm that uses our platform, and we've gone in, and I see this is where I see huge growth because a lot of organizations, they stop at the SOPs. They don't spend the time to do it. So I see opportunity first and foremost is organizations that have grown fast and quickly to slow down and see where are the gaps. And a lot of the gaps fall within that operational side. And so how do you address it? You build out policies and checklists. And then on top of that, okay, how is that access to those checklists and those SOPs happening? So within that, we're able to provide a platform. And this is where I see we've used AI to help create this. And what we've done is now these employees on the go, they could say, oh my God, I have a tenant who for the third time has lost their key. What is the policy? It throws it in there. You got to, it's a fee of $50. And then on top of that, the Access, what we do is we built it so that it'll say, do you want us to fill out the form for which you then send the tenant? It fills out the form. That's the name, the number. It fills out the form. Great. Do you want us to email that form? Yes. Do you want us to upload it to Yardi or RealPage? Yes. So then it's completing that cycle so that that person can continue to go about their day. They don't have to go back to their desk, print out the form, handwrite it, submit it over, hand it in. It's automating that process. So I think where I see the next shift for a lot of these organizations, whether they're 50 years old or they're 5 months old that we've worked with, has been around slowing down to create operational efficiencies and then ensuring how to use those by using technology behind it so that you're providing a way for your employees and your workforce to move more quickly. And those that don't adapt to that technology change, they're going to get left behind. And those that do, we're already seeing it real time, they're capitalizing on it.
Absolutely. So, Brendan, right now you're providing immense value to your clients through the platform that you've built out. You have been growing quickly. You're positioned and you're poised to continue that growth. You're also a newer firm. Many companies don't grow so quickly. I would wager that based off of who you are, the reputation you have, and the relationships that you've built along the way, a lot of your business today has probably come from existing relationships and referrals. So when we look at the power that you have within the company right now, the tools that you have accessible, the methodologies that you have, and the real value that you provide, are there any challenges when you're seeing breaking out of perhaps the initial year, the initial 2 years to actually get out there in the scale that you need to? Because there's a lot of competition in your world, right?
There's a ton of competition. Well, first of all, the success we've had, there was this individual once told me, he's like, I was having a moment where we had a client issue and he goes, did you do windows and mirrors? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, windows and mirrors. And I was like, can you elaborate a little on windows and mirrors for me? I got a window here, but what does when things are going well, open the window, look outside and shout at the people that helped you. When they're not, look internally at the mirror and see how you can improve. And I like to do that when I think about success as well. We did not get here by ourselves by any means. Yes, referrals were key, relationships and networks. And most importantly, it's that we've been that genuine non-transactional firm. We've literally we've had situations where we've gone into clients and then we took the executive team and we sat down and we said, we can no longer work with you. And this is in the last year because we're not going to succeed at being able to help you if things don't change the way that they need to change from our purview. So
Mhm.
obviously giving them an opportunity to say that they agree or don't agree. So we've been blessed. I want to say that we've been blessed to be able to have the opportunity to be where we are today. We're in a very competitive market space, and we know that. We offer some very competitive terms with all of our engagements, and I think what's been most beneficial is showing, not just talking the talk but walking the walk with our 6 months of coaching, our guarantees, ensuring that individuals, and organizations understand not only that we're talking that, but in our terms it's written there. I see us being able to continue to capitalize on this because we're going back and we're being so thoughtful. And we're a little bit different than a typical, when you have a recruiting company, a lot of times you're looking for that next position and then you're filling
Mhm.
that position and then the company is done. We slowed down and we said, great, we can do that very well, but we would prefer to better understand why the position is open. And then we help and we work with these organizations around, is there opportunities? Is this one position that you're paying $250,000 for? Should this be broken into a job for 175 and then maybe 75,000 because one is more finance focused and you want operations? So why are you trying to hire somebody that does multiple hats instead of two different ones? And
Mhm.
organizations have loved that thoughtfulness. And I
Mhm.
think that's what will continue to make us grow, is that we're always going to slow down to better understand the bigger picture with our clients.
Mhm.
But I think our backgrounds, so my co-founder and I, we both come from very unique backgrounds. He has a background in coaching, mentorship, leading many organizations, CEO of very large organizations, exited some firms, after they've been sold. And I have a background in consulting and workforce development. And when we bring those two worlds together, it has just been amazing to see the ideas that we can incorporate in the business. And the doorway project that I told you about before is just, scratching the surface of that. Workforce development in and of itself, I believe, has a big challenge. A lot of money is wasted and there's fraud. It was to the tunes of it was 24 to 28% when I researched it from a 2025 number. So you have $100 billion that's spent on workforce development, and they're saying 24 to 28% of it is on waste and fraud. Well, that's a lot of opportunity to say, hey, how could we make that better? The
Mhm.
Doorway Project helps to do that. So there's these little models in there that we have, including slowing down to create a whole platform. It's like, yes, we can come in and help you with operational workflows, but what's more important is how are you going to use them?
Mhm. Mhm.
Of course, I can leave behind 100 SOPs, but how are you going to use it?
Mhm.
So we incorporate that in every consulting agreement. It's non-negotiable. Like, again, it goes back to, I don't want to just work with you and do that transaction. Sure, I could come in and write some policies and checklists, and then do you like them? Great, they're approved. See you later. But if I know if I'm going to leave and you're not going to use them, that I can't sleep at night.
Brennan, disruption is a word that you used for how it is you're operating within your industry, and I couldn't agree more. You're doing some really incredible things, and with disruption, sometimes it's not always received in the way that it should be, right? By the rest of the market. I mean, the workforce is changing pretty quickly, right? A lot of people who are stuck with legacy thinking and, this is the way it's done, this is the way it should always be done. Perhaps they're phasing out. We're seeing some younger faces in decision-making positions and such as well. AI is coming along. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of hesitancy, and when firms with such a massive differentiator as yours come into the market and really do start to cause some disruption, it can also cause, I find, a little bit of hesitation or disbelief at times as well. People looking at what you do and saying, well, maybe they don't fully understand it. Maybe it's too much. Maybe we don't need that. We're just going to go with what we know because this is what we've seen good results from before. Is that something that you're seeing right now? Are you having people say this is too much to be true? This is too much to believe?
Man, if yeah. So we had early on one of our clients, they actually fired us, pseudo fired us. One of the managers at the company that we worked with said no more. And it was an interesting story because we actually did too good of a job. We went in and there was a certain skill set that this manager was looking for. And, your traditional recruiting company, they would, go and source candidates and try to find them, which of course we did, but then we're slowing down. We're like, this is a specific skill set in which it's usually trained on. And there's organizations that train on this specific skill set. So, and then part of what we do is we document everything. So every call that we have with every candidate is recorded. And then we use those data points to be able to go back to clients and say, of the 5 roles that you've hired, 4 of those individuals, they all said that their superpower was empathy. The 5th said that it was, being able to schedule or whatever, organization. All 4 are retained with you still. That 5th one isn't. So we go back and we provide those data points. And we're just, again, the thoughtfulness into the process, slowing down to think about it. So this client, we send over a couple candidates, interviews a couple, we get an offer. He has like 3 positions open. We work with a workforce organization that we're like, oh my God, you train on this, it's called mail merge. It's, Microsoft mail. They train on the Microsoft suite. They then teach them mail merge. And we're like, great, we actually have a position where the end client is looking for that specific technology and somebody that's more entry level, maybe 1 year experience. So we got over 3 resumes from that company that all had mail merge. We send it to the manager and we send the data points from the calls, their superpowers, again, very, very thoughtful. And the manager comes back and he's like, guys, thank you, but I'm going to pass on all of these. They're too similar. They all have the technology you knew I was looking for. I feel like you're adding to their resumes stuff that they don't have. And the thing is we coach every candidate that will help them with their resume, but we're never going to add anything to it. They have to add it to their resume. So that's kind of what blew me away too. He thought because we found so many candidates with mail merge, we got them from that organization that was training. So we're helping that local workforce organization that we were faking the resumes. So we actually laughed at first. We're like, hold on. You wanted that, we got it. There had been a difficulty in the marketplace because that's not often advertised on a resume. So we went to this organization. We said, we need mail merge. They have to have it on the resume. They worked with them to everybody that learned it. They got certified in it, right? In the Microsoft suite. So that one manager within that client, he was like, no, I'm done. And so that was the sort of disruption where I was like, we almost went too far, right? We almost did too good of a job. He hired one of our other people. He was interviewing 2 more, so I think about that. And that's where it's been education to the client has been difficult around the way that we operate. And, it's part of our DNA now and will be forever is that we're going to operate the way that we feel is best for the candidate and for the client. And some clients will fire us and we have to fire others. And I'm okay with that because I want to make sure I can make an impact with those organizations I'm working with. Not only that, but our candidates deserve to make sure they're at a company that also believes they're going to have an impact made on them.
Brandon, for someone trying to break in without the network or social capital that others seem to start with, what's the one thing that you would want them to hear?
Yeah. So David, are you looking at that more from an entrepreneur standpoint, a candidate standpoint? What's your thoughts on that?
Would you say there's a lot of parallels?
I think there's a lot of parallels. Yeah. I think you're right. I think networking it's gotten a bad rap, I guess you could say, but it's so pivotal, right? Social capital is having a network around you. And you can have at a panel I was doing last week, we were actually sitting there and, I had a lot of young graduates and early career individuals and some people that were transitioning careers. And, they're in the room with myself. They were in the room with some high level individuals from multi-billion-dollar organizations. And one of the things I think is, that social capital piece is there's opportunities for you to go out and network. And that has been helping me to succeed in my entire career is being genuine with individuals and networking with individuals from a level of not only understanding their position and having empathy for what they're doing, but also, how can I pull that information out? And you hear a lot of successful individuals, it's, kind of take your ego away and go and ask for help. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. Somebody, this was something that was messaged to me many years ago, and it was all about like, hey, those that succeed in business really well, they're not afraid to ask for help. And I think that that's so key. Is like you pull that ego aside. You want to do this, ask for help. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with talking about getting fired because you did too well. Like you got to continuously get better in your career, and you do that by asking for help, looking in the mirror. I think that it's if somebody's looking to break into this industry, number one is just doing it too. Like that's a lot of the issue. It's like talking about it, and then never executing. Just do it. Like I love Gary Vaynerchuk and all his work because it's like, hey, you got 85 to 100 years on this earth. When you're 85, your friends that you were around, some of them don't exist anymore, that you were worried about what they would think if you did something. So I think a lot of it has to do with getting out there and actually growing a genuine network. And, you can do that by going to free events like the one that I was on a panel about. Like anybody could have showed up. And you do that by just putting in that effort and then executing on it. At that event, there was maybe 40 people there, and I had given homework to all of them. One person followed up with me on that homework. Execution is going to be the key. So if anybody's looking to get into consulting, leadership, helping organizations with recruiting or hiring, lean on your network. I think asking for help, there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. And you'll feel better when you do it because people want to show up for other people. And I think just trying to capitalize on what's around you and thinking about it.
Brandon, thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights with the audience today. For anyone listening who might like to look into EqualAccess, maybe they have some needs that you could help with, or perhaps they're just curious to connect for a conversation, what would be the best way to find you?
You can contact me at brandon@theequalaccess.com. Obviously, on LinkedIn. I would love if you reached out to me there. I'm very active there. So, yeah, those are the two ways.
Brandon, thanks again for joining us on The Growth Shift.
Thank you, David. Have a great day.
Another powerful conversation on The Growth Shift. If you, like our guests, are ready to turn your expertise into a predictable, scalable growth engine, one that eliminates the grind of prospecting and enhances your high-value relationships, then it's time to connect with Valentix. We are not a marketing agency. We are your strategic growth partner, building intelligent systems that ensure your client acquisition is predictable, not dependent on chance. To see how our AI-powered frameworks can free up your time and fill your calendar with decision makers, visit valentix.io. Thank you for joining us on The Growth Shift. We'll see you next time.